Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's LinkedIn Live, which is all about helping you to improve your accent in English in three simple steps. We're going to be looking today at how you can improve I'm just going to be looking at my notes, how you can master the pronunciation of English. Then we'll look at how to speak more clearly in English. And finally, we'll look at how to imitate the way native English speakers speak so you can sound more natural in English. And before we get started, I want to make the difference between accent and pronunciation. So, accent is the word I used in the title. It's something that a lot of my clients come to me and say, Ruth, I want to improve my accent in English. And I totally understand that because as a French speaker, I feel the same way. But actually what you're looking at really and the main thing that will help you with your clarity, that will help you be understood is improving your pronunciation, improving how you pronounce certain sounds in the language in English. Also looking at the kind of rhythm, the way you make sentences and the rhythm of the words and the sentences that you make, and also being able to sound natural, saying the words in a natural way together, I suppose speaking quickly and fluidly. But in terms of improving your accent or changing your accent, that is a very difficult thing to do, and it is not necessary because all accents are brilliant, all accents are amazing. Someone that doesn't have a very, you know, I have an Irish accent, so I'm not one of these accents that everybody wants to imitate and copy. Many people want a British or an American accent, but I have a non-standard accent, but it is just as good as any other accent. And your accent as a non-native English speaker is just as good. If you can be understood, if you are clear in your speaking, then there really is no problem. So we're focusing really on the pronunciation, which will help with your, accent and clarity of speaking. So let's get into it. The first one is all about improving your pronunciation in English. And what does that mean? So, really, you have to look at English being made up of a lot of different sounds, much more than the actual letters. We have the 26 letters in the alphabet, but we actually have nearly double. We have 44 sounds in English. So, if we are looking at the letter I, there are a few ways that we can say that letter. And so it's all about knowing which word has this sound, and that's a really important one. And I think the thing is, I would say there are two things that you can do to really improve your pronunciation. The first one is to have a good note-taking system for your pronunciation, to improve your pronunciation, and really start to observe the language in terms of the sounds of English and the pronunciation. If you are taking English classes at the moment and you're not focusing on pronunciation, firstly, that's probably quite normal because a lot of English classes, general English classes, don't focus a lot on pronunciation. But maybe you could ask your teacher if that's something that you could focus on or at least get feedback on, because it really is that forgotten part of learning a language. I was thinking about it and I was thinking it's kind of the same way that in medicine with doctors don't learn much about nutrition in medicine. They don't talk about it. The traditional doctor doesn't teach nutrition or tell their patients, how they should um, improve their diet or change their diet to help with their health. But of course, diet is related to health and it can really make a difference. But I think it's the same with pronunciation. It's kind of misunderstood. It's not really taught. Like the, we do it in classes, but not as much as grammar. And it's so important because if you're misunderstood with your pronunciation, then well, then you're misunderstood, and you it's difficult to get a message across. I'd love to hear in the comments, have you ever been misunderstood with your pronunciation in English, with your accent in English? Maybe you're saying to yourself that you have a bad accent in English. Well, really, I would say it was probably a very specific case of mispronouncing certain words. So there's a lot you can do with it. And the first thing is about being aware of it, getting good feedback from people, and observing it yourself. So, really, about improving your pronunciation, I would say the first thing is about good note taking and observation. So, when you hear the pronunciation of a word that you found a bit challenging, I would always link it to something that sounds the same. So, I'll give you an example. Like a sheep, like an animal, a sheep, sheep. It sounds like the E in that sounds like cheese, the food that we eat, and when we say cheese, when we take a photograph. So you could write down that sheep, it sounds like cheese. It has the same vowel sound there. And that's really important because there is can be a lot of mispronunciation with these I and E sounds. So the classic one is ship and sheep, ship, and also remember that pronunciation is a very physical thing and you have to have the correct position of your mouth or you're not going to pronounce it well. So ship is a shorter sound and sheep is quite a long sound. You're smiling, like the way you say cheese when you take a photo. So what I would say is that some languages like Italian and French, they don't make a difference between these sounds, and that's why it can be difficult to pronounce and hear the difference between ship and sheep. The same with very important words in English, this and these. This is the singular, this book, and these is the plural, these books. So, if you mispronounce and you say these when you mean this, you're actually making a grammar mistake as well. So, you need to be really careful. So, really, I would say the main thing is if you find it difficult to pronounce or to see the difference between, hear the difference, make the difference between two words, I would make good notes so that you can come back to it and link a word. What does it sound like? So, this, the singular, this, it sounds like miss. It sounds like it, ship. It sounds like ship, it, the it in it. So yeah, that's what I would do. And the second thing I would do to help you with your pronunciation is to try doing minimal pair drills. Now, if you haven't heard of that, don't worry. But it's something that if your teacher is teaching you in a class pronunciation, they will probably do this. And it's something that I do with my clients. It's listening or practicing sounds that are very similar in sound. They only differ in sound by one sound, which is like the example ship, sheep. There's an SHP, but in the middle, the vowel sound is different. Ship, sheep. So practicing that will help you make the difference and really get used to it with your mouth. So there are many lists you can find online. I also have this in my program, in my accelerator, the Fluent English Lawyer Accelerator program. This is something, a big part of what we focus on. We focus all on speaking clarity, helping you with your English speaking fluency. This is all on pronunciation. So yeah, it's a really important part of improving that pronunciation and sounding more accurate in when you make these sounds. Okay, so that is the first point of how you can improve your pronunciation. And I would say the main thing is having good note taking and observation and practicing minimal pair drills. The second thing I want to talk about is, and I'm going to have a look at my notes, how to speak more clearly in English. So there's a lot I could say on this topic. There is the way that you say a word, the way that you say a sentence is very particular in English, and we have a certain rhythm in English. So I'm going to give you the word because this is yeah, we have idea, idea. So you see there are three syllables, idea. There is stress on one of them. What is it? Idea. So it's the second syllable that has stress. Idea. And that's very, very important in English. In other languages, this is not the same. So it's important to pay attention to the word stress, like I've just given you this example, idea, and also the sentence stress in English, which is that we stress the most important words in a sentence. So I might say, which is, or let me see, which is we stress the most important words in the sentence. So I put stress on stress and important because I wanted to emphasize these words. So that is, English, it's quite a musical language, and you will just sound much more interesting, and you can have different tones, different emotions really in how you use this kind of stress. Now, what I want to talk about is something about James Bond, the James Bond effect. And I will link this video below. It's from somebody who was talking all about biohacking neurolinguistic programming, which I don't know a lot about, but it's very interesting. And it's something that, not just as you're learning English, but somebody who is a native English speaker can definitely take note and try and think about is the way that we say a sentence. It can really show confidence or can show lack of confidence. And this is to do with the intonation. So in this video, the speaker who is an expert in confidence and let's talk about like subconscious programming, I guess you would say. So she was talking about how if you think of how does Bond say his name, he says, it's Bond, James Bond. So he's very, what would you say? He's very slow. And the way that he speaks in this short sentence when he says his name, Bond, James Bond, it's going down. And this shows power, command, confidence. Whereas imagine if James Bond had said it like this, it's Bond, James Bond. It's almost like a question, and it shows a kind of uncertainty, lack of confidence, so all of the opposite things that are much more negative. So yeah, it would be a totally different James Bond, and we wouldn't trust him. We would feel, uncertain about what he's saying. So it's the same principle here when we speak, especially when we're saying something important, is that to try to go down at the end of the sentence. Now, it doesn't work for every single type of sentence, but there is a tendency as well with native English speakers nowadays, especially younger people, is and this is an influence, I think, kind of Silicon Valley, maybe Californian influence. Also, this is very present in Ireland in the accents, is kind of an inflection going up. So it's almost like everything is a question nowadays, and this is very cool, very trendy. But actually, when you look at what I was just sharing about you with the James Bond effect, this kind of inflection and everything is a question. Like, so I was going to the park and I saw a girl and I wanted to meet her later in the cafe. This is just coming into my head now. But you see, there's that upward inflection and everything being a question. So we need to be really careful of that, both native and non-native English speakers, because it is definitely a tendency that has come up. But when we say, I was going to the park and I saw a girl called Ivy, I really liked her. I believed that we had many things in common. So, yeah, there's that intonation that has more certainty in it. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to think about in terms of, well, how to speak more clearly in English and about giving that right, correct tone and emotion. So, if you need more help with that, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. There's a lot that I can't really cover in this video in 30 minutes. It's not a lot of time. But let's move on to the third point is all about how to imitate the way native English speakers speak so you can sound more natural. So there's so many things I could talk about here, but the main thing I would talk about is the idea of connected speech. This is something they talk about in English pronunciation. It's about the words going together, about how we connect the words together when we're speaking quite fast, and also it's very natural and relaxed. It's the way natives speak informally, and it's a great way you can practice. It does take a lot of practice and imitation to really speak like this. So you could definitely practice it and use it to sound more natural. But another thing to be being aware of this is also that you're aware that natives do this, and that you it will help you to understand natives more. That you realize that this is a thing, and then you can try to understand there are certain words that are not being pronounced here, certain words that are connected together. All of the different sounds are moved together so that we can speak more quickly. So there's one thing that is, native speakers were lazy when it comes to speaking, and we don't like to pronounce all of the sounds. Like there is a certain vowel syllable called a schwa sound, which is all over the place where natives don't pronounce everything. So we have the word interest. It's not interest. So many English learners will say interest, but natives will say interest, interest. So the E here, the first inte, is reduced and it just becomes interest. Another example is the word chocolate. So we don't say chocolate, we say chocolate because the O here, the second O, is reduced, and we have this lazy way of pronouncing things. So if you say that, if you say interesting instead of interesting, and chocolate instead of chocolate, you will sound much more natural automatically. Just sounds much more natural, much more native English speaker, the way that you would speak. So yeah, there's that. And it's something to be aware of because sometimes you might misunderstand natives. You're like, what is that word? But yeah, something to remember is that native English speakers can be very lazy. And so I would bear that in mind. And then the other thing I want to do, I want to give you an example of a sentence with contractions. Now, you've probably heard of contractions. So, a contraction is like, I don't like it, which is instead of I do not like it, it becomes I don't like it. I don't like it. And I notice my clients when they're reading something, they will always try to avoid a contraction, even when it's written down with don't. People will often my clients will read do not to try to avoid it. I don't know if they think it's maybe easier or they just don't like saying it. But again, if you want to sound more natural, I would try using I don't. And again, paying attention to when natives use it. So I'm going to give you an example. Again, even here when I say I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. So I'm gonna is I'm going to. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. Um, I cannot really see what is wrong. I can't really see what's wrong. I can't really see what's wrong. So here cannot becomes can't, but it also becomes I can't really. I can't really. So again, being really lazy here, I drop the T and I say I can't really. Not I cannot really. It becomes I can't really or I can't really. I can't really see what's wrong, or I can't really see what is wrong. What's wrong? Um, yeah, so that's it. And I wish I could like write all of this because I think it's harder when you're listening and you can't really see the sentence in front of you. Maybe this is something I can do in future videos. I'm just looking at, can I post comments or anything? No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can do that. But yeah, I hope you found that useful. I enjoyed this video giving you three ways to improve your accent in English. As I said, this is exactly what I focus on in my accelerator. This is such an important part of really getting to that next level in your English speaking fluency is focusing on pronunciation, getting feedback on your pronunciation so that you can just sound much more natural, that you're accurate as well in your pronunciation and that people don't misunderstand you. And also, last week we did confident English meetings. I have a guide now to download if you want. I'm going to put that in the description or in the comments for you to download. If you didn't see that video last week, there's a very handy guide with all of the vocabulary I spoke about, some of the kind of psychological tips, I would say, for getting in the right mindset for speaking in English in a meeting. So definitely check that out. I'll link it. And also, there are places I have 4 spots now for June, July, and August. I'm looking for clients who would be interested in signing up to the accelerator. It's 3 months, 12 weeks, and it covers improving your English speaking fluency with my 4 step framework, which includes the pronunciation part, but also the vocabulary, the um, different situations in English, practicing those, the grammar. So yeah, definitely take a look at my website if you want more information on that service, on that program. And thank you for joining me on this video today, on this live, if you're watching live or the recording. Do put something in the comments if you have any questions or you want have a a comment or something about pronunciation, maybe a story about your experience with being understood, being misunderstood when you spoke English. And I will talk to you next week in our next live. Okay, see you then, everyone. Have a great